All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Brawley City Council and successor agency to the Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. Special meeting agenda for May 31st at 6 p.m. here at the City Council chambers. And if we can have the roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Hamby.
Present.
Councilmember Revelar absent. Councilmember Wharton.
Here.
And Mayor Nava.
Here.
And then Mayor Pro Tem absent right now.
He is. I believe he is going to be arriving in about 20 minutes, so he will arrive soon. Okay. So we're going to continue with the meeting. We can have our invocation by Councilmember Hamby.
Let's all stand. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are thankful to you tonight for your many blessings. Thank you for our employees and our staff and for this council. And we ask that you would be present in these proceedings tonight, that we would be given wisdom, that we would be given knowledge, and that we would set our city on the right path. We thank you for your hand of protection that's upon us. We ask that you would oversee our proceedings tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Oscar, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve it as written?
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public appearances. Comments not to exceed 4 minutes. This is a time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. The mayor will recognize you when you come to the microphone. Please state your name for the record. You're not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please direct your questions and comments to the City Council.
Hello, my name is Lori Gibson. I'm here representing the SNOR campaign, Senior Noise Ordinance Reform Effort. We still haven't heard anything. We were just wondering if there's something new going on with that. We haven't heard anything.
I know there's public comment, but I think I'm the council member that has been making some comments during my council report out. So since the last meeting, the effort is to get the Wednesday mitigation. So what I heard was we are dialing down the volume for Wednesday night. That's kind of the night we're targeting. I know Thursday, Friday, Saturday are the other nights that are still going on. So I have not had any contact after that with your manager, Tony, to get any input if there's been any difference. And I'm sure you're going to maybe share your thoughts. Since
well, I can just say that Saturday night, it was I was up at like midnight. It was really loud, and it was a lot of foul language, a lot. The guy who was rapping was saying "Emmett" a lot, over and over again. And I thought, that's not very tacky, very tacky. So, I mean, that might be something you guys, you know, it's a whole thing, you know?
Understood.
Well, it's like, to your point, it's not over. We're trying to work on something that's a livable solution. So definitely more to go. My intention is to round back and hopefully get with the owner some more and see what we can do to address at least one night. And if we have a model that works, we can move to the next night. And if that doesn't work, then we can potentially go from there on other hopeful solutions.
I believe the goal is for it to go by the law every night, not just one night, every night, like everybody else has to do.
Sure, I mean, I think the comment is
I think we are following the law and the use downtown, which we've commented many times.
I think the comment, though, is reflective of about the ordinance and the work on changing that. So, Ms. Gibson, thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none. We will start off with and let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Ramon Castro.
Sorry.
He's, you know, you didn't get as big of applause as Luke because you're a little bit later. You know, he showed up like,
I used it all up.
he used
He's
it.
much
he-
better looking.
No, he used it all up. He used all the claps up. All right, so, let the record note that Mayor Pro Tem Castro has joined the meeting, and appreciate that. All right, next item is study session. Review, discuss, and provide additional direction to the 2023-2024 preliminary budget study session number 1 for fiscal year 2023-24, presented by Tyler Salcido, City Manager, and Sylvia Luna, Acting Finance Director.
Well, before Sylvia gets started, and she's gonna do all the heavy lifting here, I just want to commend her for all the very hard work and sleepless nights on end to getting to where we're at. She's done a tremendous job, and it'll be reflected in the presentation, so thank you, Sylvia.
She's like, keep going.
Okay. All right, thank you, Armando. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and members of the public. Sylvia Luna, Acting Finance Director. First, I would like to thank you all, as well as my fellow staff members, for being here tonight and making time from your agendas to meet and discuss the preparation of the fiscal year 23-24 budget. As you may know, the beginning of the new fiscal year is just around the corner, and with this being said, the budget process is one of the most critical processes where input from city staff, management, council, and the public is required in order to build a realistic, reliable, and meaningful budget. A budget that will prioritize on transparency and accountability, ensure that all of our budget decisions are legal and ethical, support short and long-term decision-making, and most importantly, a budget that truly reflects the community needs and priorities. Okay. So today's presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the 2023-24 budget process timeline. We're going to have a high-level presentation, high-level overview presentation of all the city funds with special attention for the general fund and the capital improvement plan. We're also going to have a very high-level overview of other non-general funds, which is our special revenue funds, internal service funds, and enterprise funds. So I'm going to start talking a little bit, before we start looking into the numbers, about the budget process. So the format of our meetings for the budget process requires us to all times ensure that the budget process is an inclusive and transparent process. For these purposes, we have adopted the same format as last year, with the exception of the meeting timeline. So last year, we had a total of 6 public meetings, with the purpose of dedicating each study session to a special fund category. And this year, due to unforeseen circumstances and timing issues, we're only doing 3 public meetings, delivering key highlights of the new budget for each of the funds. So we're gonna follow the same format. We're gonna have a dedicated budget website page created for this budget. The public will have access to the 3 different PDF versions of the budget workbook, and as well as the presentations. All the public meetings will be available online during and after the meetings, and all public meetings will be held in the council chambers starting 6 p.m. So tonight we have a special council meeting. The next 2 are gonna be at 2 regular council meetings. So with every budget study session, we're going to have an updated budget workbook. This budget workbook is a 150-page document that contains detailed information by fund and account, as well as an extensive set of notes to provide the reader with a better understanding of what is it that we are including in the budget. The format of the budget workbook will remain the same. So the data presented on the reports includes the fiscal year 21-22 actuals, includes the original adopted budget from last year, and includes our current budget for 22-23, which reflects the activity of all the budget adjustments done throughout the year. It also includes actual activity as of May of 2022. And just as a note, all the comparisons and analysis provided tonight, it's a comparison of the current budget versus the proposed budget. So finally, the budget timeline. So tonight we're holding a special council meeting. We're going to talk about the general fund, the capital improvement plan, and other non-general funds. The goal tonight is to receive direction and input for the proposed budget number 1. And based on your direction and recommendations, we will incorporate those changes to our next proposed budget, which will be explained on our June 6th meeting. After our June 6th meeting, again, once more, after we review the impacts of implementing those changes, we'll continue to finalize our budget and adopt our budget by June 20th. So that's the goal. It's a very ambitious plan. If everything goes well, hopefully we're going to start the fiscal year with a successful, flexible, and functional budget. Okay. So I think I'm not sure if you have any questions any questions about the, okay. Thank you.
We're just following along. It's a good presentation, so.
Thank you. Feel free to interrupt at any point of the presentation. I'm here to answer questions, but my fellow staff members are here as well. They are the experts, so this is their budget. General fund overview. So the general fund, it's the main operating fund for the city. This fund houses basic services for the community, such as fire, police, library, recreation programs, and it's our main fund, right? So for this fiscal year, the general fund revenues on our proposed budget are $21.2 million. We have a slight increase compared to the current budget. We only have a difference of $26,000, so we're kind of almost remaining flat. As you can see, 61% of those revenues belong to tax revenue. So our top 4 tax revenues, making up that 61%, or part of that 61%, are sales taxes, the vehicle license fee, our utility users tax, and property taxes. All of those estimates that you see right now for the $21.2 million are a moderate revenue projection. We are not expecting at this point major changes. We're already on May. And we have incorporated almost any state, county, and agency projections, as well with the help of our external consultants that are constantly monitoring each of these revenue sources.
And these are conservative, as she said, only $26,000 difference between the prior year. We wanted to be a little conservative because everybody has this talk about a potential recession, fuel prices, anticipation of potentially coming down. That drives a lot of that, as well as sales tax, the market changes, property taxes cooling off, I think, for real estate. So with all those things in consideration, we didn't want to get too aggressive there. So.
Still with that moderate projection, overall, our tax revenue, it's increased by 7%. It's projected to be 7% higher than the current budget. So that's the overall increase between all of those sources.
Sylvia, is there just a tinge more color? I'm sure there's a lot associated with it, but under interest, miscellaneous, and reimbursement, looks like a pretty big year-over-year delta there, over $1 million. Is there?
Great question. So that reduction on 1.1 million is related to our Lion Center roof and pool project. So that line item includes contributions. Part of it, it's a grant, the per capita grant. Part of it, it's program income coming from CDVG, and part of it, it's contribution from the high school, I believe, from the school district. But again, it's not budgeted this year because that's considered a carryover revenue. So that's why we see that fluctuation. But that revenue is expected to come in July and August once we complete the project, same as the expense side of the project. So that is still expected to come in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The fun part, expenses overview for the general fund. So in the expenses, What is it that we're including on this proposed budget? So as of right now, unlike other years, for your initial proposed budget, you will see minimal changes. This year, because of the timing situation that we have incorporated most of those scenarios that are already a given scenario that we know that are happening. Those boxes in green represent personnel, salaries, and benefits changes incorporated, such additional FTEs that were added through the current fiscal year, 22-23. We're including the 1% COLA included on the 2021 MOUs, and we're also included merit increases to applicable employees. It has also the increases for prices for the pension and medical plans are being captured as part of this budget, as well as the inflationary impact on supplies and services, which is right now a very high concern. So we are accounting for that, especially on the utilities. According to the California Public Utility Commission, we're expecting a 20% increase at least on electricity and natural gas. So this has two sides, right? It's good on one side, on the revenue side, but it's also impacting our expense side. So since I believe the increase is expected from January to June, we're only accounting for a 10% increase for inflation. Other things that we're considering here, we're including our standard allocations for workers' compensation, insurance, and our pension obligation bond. This is our key items, standard to our general fund allocations to each department based on their budget and their level of expense. We're also including multi-year contracts. So these are active current contracts as a city. It's actively engaging with those for services and technical services. We're including software, hardware, and license maintenance. And we're also including our vehicle leases. So this year, at least on the general fund, we are adding 3 new leases for police, fire, and parks. So those estimates are as well here included. Just as a reminder, we do have a carryover portion, which these are savings from, it's an estimate of savings for this fiscal year that we're expecting to carry over to the next year. So that's 1.8 million. So for the proposed budget, we have considered all the elements on the left side of the presentation. This is the high-level overview of how the expenses look by department. As you can see, 34% of the general fund expenses belong to the police department, second by the fire department with 19%. Overall, the expenses add up to 20.7 million for this fiscal year. Okay. So this is just more numbers about what are the key changes happening on the general fund. So first item, we have salaries and benefits with all those elements that I just explained, the COLA, the merit, the increases on medical insurance prices. We have an increase of 9%. That's an impact to our general fund of $650,000. Another big item, it's our patient contribution for payroll. So all of our PEPRA and classic plans rate increased for this fiscal year significantly. So we're gonna see that impact as well. Utilities?
I'm sorry, why do we have such a big jump on medical benefits?
Medical benefits, it has to do, well, one, the increase on the prices for the medical plans, and it also has to do with the number of employees that have members enrolled in the plans. Yeah, it's a combination of both. Okay, so the only 2 elements that are showing a decrease versus the prior year, it's our pension accrued liability and the workers' compensation. So that's are the only 2 elements. So overall, this is an impact of 1.5 million to our general fund just for this line items. Okay. General fund reserves overview. So before we talk about our actual numbers and estimates, I just want to take a moment to emphasize the importance of having reserves. So have my notes in here. So overall, why do we need a reserve? So reserves are critical to an organization to provide operational flexibility and handle unexpected scenarios such as natural disasters, fluctuations on cash flow, or things out of our control, like an economic recession. So for this reason, the reserve policy is one of the most important policies that a city can adopt to ensure fiscal health to the city. So for us, our reserve policy, it's 15%, the target is 50% of our total expenditures. You want to say something?
I will in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So based on the revenues and expenses that I just presented, the estimated surplus for fiscal year 23-24, it's 528,000. If we review our reserves, which is the table on the right, you will see all the categories that how we allocate those reserves. So the items on the top, such as the non-spendable, the restricted for library, the operational carryovers, the capital replacement reserves, and the public safety personnel reserves are restricted items. Our unassigned line, which is the 3.7 million, it's the only line on our reserves that would allow us, that will be our safety cushion in case we need to address an unexpected scenario. So for this year, including that surplus, we're estimating to have a unassigned reserve of 4.2 million at the end of fiscal year 2024, which that put us on a surplus of 1,088,000 compared to the target.
So, Mayor, if I could jump in and maybe discuss for council's consideration as we review the budget, a little bit higher level conversation on the reserves. As we're all aware, governments are having the resources constraint, with rising costs, inflation, potential looming recession, increased costs like Sylvia had mentioned, especially with employee health care costs and pension costs just continue to rise. The previous slide showed a small savings this year for both work comp and UAL, but pension UAL, the unfunded accrued liability. The bad year that the pension fund had last year has not hit yet, so it's coming starting next year, which will continue to decrease our costs. So what that means, in relation to the reserve, our policy is 15%. We kind of inherited that reserve staff. I think maybe now, as we review the budget, it's an opportunity to try to maybe consider the reserve policy in a different light. As I mentioned before, the rising costs paired with the stagnating revenue growth means that we have to be more efficient with our resources, the use of them, and that includes reserves. Building reserves is the use of current revenues, and we governments need to weigh the opportunity costs of doing so. So is it better to provide services today or maybe save some money for the future, or a combination of both? So,
but if I could add something, I mean, the reserve policy was set by us, so we didn't have one previously, and so we set it as council. And so it's really, quite honestly, it's up to us whether we want that to go up or down. It's not something that needs to be set in stone, but I understand where you're coming from. So I know that many staff members are probably familiar with the fact that we do have a reserve policy, but I mean, some of us, I think Donnie was here, I've been here when we set it. So it's not, it's up to this council.
Sure.
And up to, your recommendation on what you want to do, so. You're the expert, my friend.
Okay, well, this is something maybe we address in the future after the fiscal year, to bring back the reserve policy with maybe more of a reserve target that's a range as opposed to a single point. A minimum and a maximum. So, a range, that provides a margin of error to operate within, right?
And I don't quite remember how we set it, to be quite honest. It's been a while, so.
I mean, in the past, standard has been sort of best practice 2 months of your expenditures in case, all the revenue cease for whatever reason. That would put our reserve probably at about 16, 17%. So, but I think it's important that a single point, say like 15%, it's vague, right? And when you consider is those actual reserves, are they too high or too low? So, but, you know, with a range, say, for example, if a single point was 20%, but the actual reserves came in on 17, well, you know, that's acceptable, is it? You know, possibly. Or, you know, our reserves are 27 compared to a policy of 20%. That could be too high. You know, with a range, we can kind of stay in. There's little need to revisit every year.
Sure.
You know, and
Sure.
And
It's within range.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and so and if it falls out of that range, say it gets low, below the low end or over the high end, then that means that's a clear indication. Hey, we need to come back and we need
Sure.
to look at what we need
Which
to do.
it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
it has, and
Yeah.
we've
Well,
had,
yeah.
When's
But-
the last time, you know, before these last couple of years that we were at 15% or at 20% at this point?
When I first came on board, we were single digits.
yeah.
Exactly.
And we steadily built it with a lot of hard work
Yeah.
from everybody in this room and staff that isn't here, so. But I think it's an opportunity to come back and readdress that in the future. So with that in mind, when you're seeing what some of the items that didn't make the first round of budget, but there's requests, and she'll get to that, you know.
Sure.
And other things too, when we go into closed session, you
To
know.
be able to use some money
Yeah,
and still
and-
meet the
yeah.
reserve
Yeah.
guideline that we set, you know, and if it's a range, it's easier to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the downside to having that, a 20% reserve?
What the downside, you just have a single point? Well, one issue is with certain council members, maybe their risk appetites are different, right? You could, some of those that think that it's too high versus some that think it's too low, you know, you can have a range to kind of help come to a consensus on that.
And we didn't have a policy.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
but understood, like, meaning,
Yeah.
what's the risk in that? It's not so much risk, it's just the appetite for risk. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's so.
I mean, it's
And
money
I
sitting
think
there
it's-
that could be invested or something
Right,
like that.
more
but
of
if
a
it, they would,
rigidity,
if it was a
yeah, in the-
range, for
yeah.
example, they don't necessarily have to come back to council every time, being like,
Yeah.
hey, we want to use some
Or-
of this money
gives
to
you that
do this, or,
flexibility.
it gives you
Or
flexibility.
with our
Yeah.
financial statements
Yeah.
yearly when we're audited,
Yeah.
you know, it's.
You're not meeting your
Yeah.
own guy, yeah.
Right.
uh-huh.
Yeah, and you know, at the low end, it says, hey, we're being a good steward, you know, and then if we set a high end, it's, hey, are we really using the resources to
Right.
Right, you're
providing
not,
the
'cause you're
public
tying them
service?
up,
Yeah.
essentially.
That's what
you know?
I'm, that's
Uh-huh.
what I'm at,
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
So those are just some things to consider as we go through the budget, and sorry for digressing there, but I think that was important, and if it's council's desire, we can bring that policy for under review in the future.
I think it's important to do that and revisit that, you know?
Thank you.
It's a living, breathing city,
Yes.
you know, so it's like, we gotta continue
We
to
got to evolve.
adapt
with
and
the
evolve,
times,
yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So with that being said, these are the pending budget requests. So this is what it's not included on your proposed budget that can potentially reduce that surplus of $528,000. So the squares in green, those represent personnel and staff requests. The light blue, it's equipment. Boxes is in color orange. Those are facility improvements. The pink, it's events. And the last one, that blue, it's a vehicle lease that it's pending to be incorporated. This budget, all of these budget requests are valid and much needed requests. That the estimated total fiscal impact for those is $411,000. The fiscal impact that you're seeing on screen right now, it's not the full cost, it's just the net impact. Some of these budget requests have offsets. So for example, the evidence technician will be replacing a community service officer, or for example, the recreation clerk can be offset with part-time salaries and so on. So what you're seeing is just the net fiscal impact.
And just looking at these requests, I can see most of them would be, for the most part, would be built into our budget as continual. Like if we were to approve and move forward with this,
Correct.
these would be ongoing expenses. Hence, I think still
Most-
highlighting some of the
most of-
discussion
most of
that we
them,
just
yes.
had. Yeah.
Within this budget, we didn't dive too deep in it, but we've added, what, over 12
12
full-time
Yes.
Employees, yeah.
employees to this budget already, and it's I believe 3 to 4 in fire, police, 5
So-
in fire. Maybe you can go
I
over.
have. So
Yeah.
we have a 0.25 FTE for a finance management analyst. The analyst is going to be taking care of law enforcement and fire grants. We have around 22 active grants right now, and they all require financial reporting. So that's all in finance. We also have one full-time human resources generalist added to our staff, and we have 5 firefighters converted from part-timers to full-timers. We have police department just added throughout the year 2 SROs. Those 2 SROs are fully funded between grants and contributions from the school district. And we have 3 police officers that they got through the 2022 COPS grant. So the police additions are fully funded. I believe those are all the additions that we have.
My point was that we have added, and these are
Yes.
additional requests. Not that we didn't consider any requests.
Right.
And we did a good job, with the department heads and staff of almost working in quite a bit that we could. And we needed to see what the first go-around was. Right? So now, when, as you've seen the reserves and what have you, we want to make sure that we let you know what didn't quite make the budget on the first draft. Just so if there's a priority there from you all, we can work that in. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All
It's a
right.
good presentation.
Thank you. All right, so this is all I have for the general fund overview. I don't know if there's any questions, any direction or input you would like to provide.
Are there any comments from council with respect to, in particular, that last slide? It was just the pending budget requests impact, the fiscal impact is $411,000. So is this, as you stated, Tyler, these were items that they didn't make it past the first round of the draft of this budget, right?
They weren't
And so you wanted to see-
eliminated. We just wanted
They
to see
weren't
status
eliminated,
quo.
and you want to see
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
appetite of council is on this.
Yep.
Okay.
And also with some of the alternatives we could consider for your in closed session too, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's another closed session
Yeah.
item that we need to discuss in that. That involves budget,
Yeah.
so.
You know, I do see some of these small requests that, they seem very small. I know, I think that some areas that you could address and some of the smaller, ticket items, like the kitchen remodel for the fire station. Where are we with their, as far as their upgrades for their barracks? Has that been addressed?
We're working on that, do you know where we're at?
So I can,
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
talk about the capital improvement plan. So
Okay.
Chief has budgeted using DIF funds for the expansion of fire station number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a project of about $300,000. But this one, it's additional, that's separate from that project.
But the barracks are being addressed, right? Because we did take a tour there a few years ago and it was pretty pathetic.
But like you said, there's a
It's where are
capital
we?
improvement fund discussion coming
Got
up.
it.
Yeah.
Good evening. Yes.
Apologize for
So just to define, the current project that's being proposed under the development impact fees is the expansion and renovation of the restroom facilities to provide for the number of firefighters we have. There will be some modifications and improvements to the barracks, but the overall, what you saw during your station tour, we're going to be addressing in future projects. Right now, we're taking care of the facilities that have to be dealt with right now. And then
Mandatory.
these that are shown here are separate from that project.
Got it.
And in regards to that, we will probably be putting out to bid in the next, within this quarter.
Actually, within the next 2 weeks.
Within the next 2 weeks.
awesome.
There's the expert
Great
right
to
there.
hear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, no more questions. And, okay, capital improvement plan. So our capital improvement plan is proposed for adoption every year, and it includes all the major infrastructure and heavy equipment acquisitions the city commits to invest on improvements of streets, expanding facilities, improving and creating new parks. So the handout that you have, so if you're looking at the budget workbook, the schedule of projects. It's on page 127 to page 129, but I provided a separate handout so you don't have to go and look through the PDF document, which is those tables, that table right there. So our capital improvement plan is presented on a 5-year schedule, indicating the fiscal year in which these projects are expected to begin or being completed. Some of these projects are multi-year projects due to the complexity of the project. And well, the 5-year CIP plan is a requirement to receive gas tax, Measure A, transit, and ADA funding. So we are obligated or required to present our capital improvement plan in this format. So once the budget gets adopted, all projects get a project code assigned to track revenues and expenditure and ensure budget compliance and monitor the activity of the project. So for this year, our public works divisions will have a very busy year. So as you can see, we have street projects. We have 8.1 million on new funding for street projects that relates to 10 projects, from which 1.9 million relate to carryovers. So those are projects that are current ongoing projects that will highly likely be completed during the next fiscal year. So we're carryover in the expenses. We're expecting those revenues to come in. All of these projects have several or multiple funding sources, which I'm going to explain in a couple of more slides in there. But overall, that's the expected for street improvements. One of the biggest projects that we have this year, it's the Main Street rehabilitation project along with the water line construction. This project, it's around 7.2 million, phase 1. So we have phase 2 for next year, but this includes 3.4 million in ARPA funding. So this is one of the most critical projects that we have, as the ARPA ruling indicates that all of these projects must be obligated by December of 2024 and fully paid and disbursed by December of 2026. So the Public Works, it's doing an amazing job. I believe the latest status on that is we're going to bid December.
Yeah, the plans should be ready. Right now, we're in the process of the requesting for authorization to get the E76 to move forward. So we're looking to put it out to bid anywhere between October and December.
So just in time. Just in time to meet the ARPA, the ARPA ruling. So for water treatment plant, we have funding of $639,000 in new projects. That's 2 projects. The majority of the projects in here, which is 2 projects, 2 big projects, it's 1.5 million. Water distribution, they're requesting this year a Vector truck in the amount of $700,000. So I think I've got here in 2021. I think there's been a recurrent need from the department, if I recall correctly, for several years now. So now we're in a huge need to replace this truck. So we also have a carryover project for a dump truck, which I think we're actually looking for it at this very moment for $100,000, which is also to support streets operations. Wastewater treatment plant, total carryover projects, 1.3 million. We're amending the budget. That means we're increasing the budget based on the Public Works Division's most accurate estimates. Obviously, there's inflation and more things added to the project as I received the actual quotes of $926,540, and this is just for 2 projects. So overall, we have 5.2 million on CIP carryovers, and that's a total of 10.4 million on capital improvement programs that the city is committing for these improvements.
The 10.4 is everything together, carryover and new, or is the 10.4 just the new?
The 10.4 is just the new.
Just the new. Okay.
Yes, just the new. So well, if we look, right now we're only looking at the public works section, but overall, we have in carryovers 7.1 million, and 10.8 is just 2023-24 funding.
Okay.
So
busy.
Yeah.
very busy.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, Ron.
Yeah, exactly. No pressure.
Just another point of information on the Main Street and water main replacement project. There is a little hang up right now with getting the encroachment permit approval from Caltrans. There is just one corner, that intersection relies on their approval, and so we've been trying to push them to try to get that approved. So just a point of information.
Let me know what that is, and I'll reach out to ICTC and our Caltrans contact, and we'll try to get that addressed immediately.
It's been at District 11 Encroachment Engineering Office. So
I know that, but once I get involved with that, trust me, it's gonna get addressed. Yeah.
Political pressure.
Yeah.
Political.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so not only Public Works will have a very busy year, but citywide, all of our departments are trying not to do just their day-to-day, but also improving their facilities and improving new ways to do things to serve better our community. So the police department, with the use of development impact fees, is planning to create new conference rooms in the amount of $120,000. We do have a carryover project, which is also a facility improvement in the amount of $150,000, which is the renovation of the evidence room. So all of these projects have been verified and validated to make sure they comply with the use of development impact fees. And that's why departments are proposing to achieve these projects. Parks improvements. So we have a total of, all of them are carryover projects. We have improvements for Alice Giroux, Scott Pace. What's the other? There's another park for the T-ball field as well. So they're all getting, yes, Pat Williams,
That's what
thank you.
that is right there where the magician's at. You know?
Had a magician?
They had a magician
They
there.
had a magician.
And he showed up kind of late. I said, hey, I think he made himself disappear.
So wonderful projects for the Parks Department. The total amount of the carryover funding is $351,000 and another $100,000 for this year. Total of 3 projects. Chief York just explained us their facility improvement project, which is the expansion of Fire Station 1. That project was budgeted for last year. That latest quote that he received has an amended amount, and we're going to require $100,000 more to complete that project. Recreation, I think this year we're finally completing the roof and pool renovations. So this is all a carryover funding project, and I believe it's estimated to be completed by August of this year.
It's gonna start mid-August, right?
Oh, mid-August?
Yeah. And that took some
Yeah.
jumping through the hoops from Anna and Rachel and working with HCD, so we didn't hinder all the programs over the summer, which was great that we could do that.
It just splashed some things around there.
Yeah, slashing some things around.
Okay. Total CIP carryovers for non-public works CIP projects is 1.9 million, and the other total, it's 10.4, but I think that's misstated. Senior Center. So we have more facility improvements. Rachel, it's working. We'll use the pedestrian funds to construct an ADA ramp in the amount of $112,000.
But why is that costing so much?
Inflation.
No, prevailing wage
Prevailing
is only
wage.
a fraction of that. Is ridiculous. I tell you that. It's how many hours of work is that?
It involves, Anna, maybe
I'll do
you
it
could-
for half.
I think there's design.
Are you aware of all
It
the,
involves design
Yep.
and then to make sure it's a standard,
Compliant.
for compliance.
That's so.
You can go on the state and download. Download the requirements. It's so simple. That is excessive. That's kind of like those toilets that the federal
$300
government
$300
spends
hammer.
$300,000 on a toilet. That's quite a bit.
It is. It's a lot of money.
I mean, we build stuff. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. And we bid on prevailing wage projects too, and prevailing wage hardly has anything to do with that. Some of it, I get it, Tyler, but.
well, I guess my point being, it's not just a ramp. There's
No.
other piece of it, so.
It's a design.
Construction.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it.
Oh, you,
Yeah.
But it's quite excessive.
Yeah, it is.
we can take a look. We can review.
All right. Finally, not least, library, it's expanding the number of bookcases on one of their wings. So that project is a small one, $40,000. So that's going to help us increase our book reserves. So
Is it, Is it removing, or, like, out with the old, in with the new, something more,
I think that she's adding more.
just adding?
Adding more bookcases.
Okay.
Yes. So right now she's trying to get a contractor to work on that project, but it's an active project. Okay, funding sources overview. So for all of the projects presented here, some of them have several funding sources. This year in particular, we have more of a grants and one-time funding. That 6.6 million represents 61% of the total funding for these projects. Obviously, ARPA, it's a big item for 3.4. Public Works Division has been doing a great job. There's other grants like the CRISA grant, the 2020 earmark grant. We have STBG funding. So we have more than one grant this year to help complete these projects. The rest are just standard funding. These revenue projections as well as come from multiple sources, the state, agencies. We have incorporated as much as possible. And 10.8 million, it's the total funding, which ties back to the total projects on your schedule. So these are fully funded, not funded by general fund. So I don't know if you have any comments or questions for capital improvement plan?
Not a bad idea.
Sylvia, more of a general question. Would you happen, and you may not, have, I know our former finance director did, I think we had a study session where it was listed all of the projects that have grant funding associated with it, and there was kind of a total. Would you happen to have that? I'm just looking at the one-time funding and grants, but I think it, for the public to understand, we're often told, we need more grants, and I always want to highlight how really successful we have been at procuring grants to the work of the staff.
So yeah, I have some figures I can provide. For example, project for C Street from First Street to the Imperial Avenue, 96,000. It's being funded by the CRISA grant. So CRISA stands for the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act. So that's one new funding source that we have this year. We also have the earmark grant that it's funding 2.6 million for the Main Street project as well. 3.4 million it's for ARPA funding for same project. We also have another new funding source. It's called LPP Formulaic, and this one stands for Local Partnership Program. So this is in the amount of 327,000, and it's funding project number 2023-09, which is improvements on C Street from Western Avenue to First Street, and from Evelyn Avenue to Richard Avenue. So we have that one as well. The rest of the projects are being funded with our regular streets funds based on our current and estimated allocations, and the remaining of the funds for the water and the water treatment plant are being funded with their own funds, their fund balance reserves.
So I have a question on capital improvements. Over the last few years, we brought it up. I brought it up to Tyler in private, brought it up here in meetings, and we discussed areas, and this is going to be for you, Ron, pretty much. We discussed areas where, and again, we would have to look at details here when it comes to some of the street work, where you're redoing curbs and gutters and some of the street, sometimes shrinking the width of the street to obviously reduce maintenance costs going forward. Your predecessor refused to acknowledge that that could be done, and I was hoping that perhaps you can dive into that a little bit. We know we've asked that for future developments. I know that Los Lagos, some of their design is looking and heading in that direction. But if you could, please, and I would like to see this probably going forward, like in the next year, not this year, but where we could make some changes and save the city money going forward. And so that would be not just, maybe perhaps it'd be a little bit more of an expense initially, but if it would save us money over 10, 15, 20 years, obviously money that's much needed in other areas. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about the Main Street water line construction, meter installations, and street rehabilitation. The total project you show 7.1 million. it says from First to 9th Street. So is that total reconstruction, including all the underground?
So this is just phase one. A very important point that I forgot to mention. So only 23, 24 it's funded, but you're gonna see funding. You're gonna see a list of projects for the next 5 years. So phase two, it's included on schedule for 24, 25. The total of that project, it's around almost $13 million. So phase one is just the half of the cost for the first phase, which is happening with the ARPA funding for this fiscal year.
Okay. And then, so the rest of the project that's projected out through the next 5 years goes to what? How far?
So just till 24, 25. So that will be project 2023-08. So if you go to fiscal year 24, 25, that part of the project is Main Street from 9th Street to Eastern Avenue. The total amount of that project is almost $6 million, and it's all being funded with highway relinquishment money.
Okay.
And Measure D monies. So the first portion, the critical portion, that includes the installation of water meters for that section, which is part of the water infrastructure budget under the ARPA. That's why we're starting with that part of the phase, right? Because we're trying to use those funds. Right. And ideally, that grant funding, we need to do drawdowns in order for the program to see that we're actively using those funds. So we're prioritizing on those projects.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Good, thank you.
So the last part, the last table you will see in regards to the capital improvement plan, it's a list of projects that are not considered, of course, for funding, but they also do not have a funding source. So generally, if they're listed on any of the fiscal years, it's because a funding source has been identified for each of the projects. But on your last page, those are projects, potentially acquisitions that departments have communicated as a need that do not have a funding source. So once we see that there are more grants, actively grants, we're always thinking on revisiting this list to make sure we're trying to find a funding source and complete them. But as for now, this is the list of necessities.
The annual ADA improvements, are those to city facilities, or is that to like out on the curbs and sidewalks and stuff?
Yes, it can be used for city facilities, and it can also be used for any street improvements whatever is required. So the city allocates, just as a standard practice, $25,000 a year for those type of needs, like whatever it's needed.
Whatever it may be. I mean, it doesn't. Based on the ADA ramp, that's not going to cover much. But,
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not going to cover much. Right. Yeah.
Sounds like the mayor pro tem is volunteering to.
We do need to put that community improvement committee group that I wanted to put together when I first got here. They could build that, and obviously all the labor would be donated, and you would just buy material. It's simple. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do. I'm discussing some stuff with Tyler at the moment that we could help us save a lot of money in those areas. Well, Luke and I can build it. I mean,
yeah.
Perfect.
We really can. And I mean,
we'll mix the concrete by hand.
Okay, so moving on to our last slide.
I don't do cement. Sorry.
That's okay.
For the record.
Moving on for the next slide. Now we're going to talk about the non-general funds. So in here we're talking about 40-something funds that the city has categorized. This is a high-level overview. So special funds, we have 36 funds. What are those funds? It mainly includes our ARPA fund, where we're tracking all of our revenues and expenditures. We also have the law enforcement grants. We have the housing programs and our program income funds, the development impact fees, community district facility funds, where we track administration costs or any salary expenses that are incurred to maintain those community facility districts. And I don't know if I said it already, but also our deferred development impact fees. Enterprise funds, we have a total of 4. So that includes our water, wastewater, solid waste, and airport. Internal service funds, we're talking about our maintenance fund, the one that tracks the city fleet vehicles maintenance. And we also have our shared cost fund, which tracks workers' comps, pension bond obligation. It's just housing those allocations to distribute back to the other departments. And finally, our fiduciary fund, which is a successor agency. It has our county bond obligations, and it captures all the administration and revenue obligations that we have. So overall, the total revenues for these funds are 24.3 million, and we have expenses of 24.7. So there's a deficit of $466,000. That deficit is mainly coming from our gas tax fund. So we are tracking and we're monitoring those revenues and those expenses. The majority of those expenses need to be there, but we continue to be careful when proposing projects to make sure that we are not overusing this fund for those purposes. So no major changes are expected. We have incorporated all of the operational needs. All the inputs from the state, the county are here, and we will continue to monitor and update this as required. I don't know if you have any comments or questions. And that's it. This is all what I have tonight. So next steps will be to receive more input and direction from council and the public, evaluate funding sources, refine those cost estimates, and I will be here tonight, next week on Tuesday, presenting those changes and what the fiscal impact is, how implementing those changes is going to impact our revenues and our expenses and our reserves overall. So we're going to do probably a shorter study session that highlights those changes, right, based on decisions. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
I think one last few comments. To me, what's reflected in this budget is all the, almost said a bad word, darn work that staff, departments, each department and their staff.
What word were you going to say?
Like when it breaks, water comes through.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, seriously, that I mean,
flood. You were say flood?
Yeah,
right.
lots of work that is going on that I think is reflective in this budget from everybody out and in every department out there. And one last thing I would just like to emphasize is what does the public care about? They love police, fire, recreation, libraries. Water
service?
Yeah.
Water
I'm talking
treatment?
general fund.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody wants to flush the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with this council, we've continued to increase the funding for all those. Libraries, 47% increase since 2021. Wow. Graffiti, I mean, we've made that a full-time position. People love that. Police and fire, they're both up about 20% from 2 years ago. I mean, the work's being done, and you know, I think the public needs to appreciate that what council is and their emphasis are we're concentrating on.
And I want to thank you and staff, of course. I mean, I know I've talked to you multiple times, Tyler, over the past few weeks, and he is taking a tremendous amount of time working on the budget. I know Sylvia and the rest of staff is working on it as well, so I appreciate the effort in working with leadership to make this come together and easier for us to help make better decisions for the city. So thank you all very much. There's a lot to consider. I know we have a closed session discussion that we're going to discuss here soon, and that may or may not change the direction of our next meeting, but I do want to thank you very much. I think the presentation is very good. The format I enjoy because it's easier to understand and comprehend. City budgets are not like private business budgets. They're much different. So it's always good to be able to know how the money is being spent and raised. So thank you.
Just want to say before I forget, I just want to say a big thank you, particularly for my finance staff. They're true warriors. They have been helping me a lot. As you know, we're short staff, but we are learning and we're trying to do the best that we can with what we have. And I believe that's the same situation that almost every department on our city lives. And I also want to thank every staff member that is here tonight, because this is my first budget and they have helped me like you have no idea, all my questions, and they keep sharing their knowledge and helping me. So thank you. Thank you a lot.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
If I could make a comment too, Mr. Mayor, and Sylvia, just for leading the charge and helping to compile and put this together, and the many, many, I'm sure, hours, nights, weekends, I've heard the stories, so, and just as you acknowledge your team, and really for the rest of staff, our department leaders, when you make a budget presentation appear somewhat entertaining, visually appealing, and most important, understandable, to the public, municipal finances, it can be extremely complex. Just so the public knows, there's a whole lot more, and this is the abbreviated version, all of which is available. But the work that it takes to do that and bring that and put that in front of the public as well as council, you did a fantastic job. I really appreciate the work and know that that was not easy, and make it a lot easier for us to go forward and continue to make decisions as we work through this budget process. So look, it's as close to perfect as you can make it, but if we work together, I don't see anything here that we can't get through and figure out. So I'm very appreciative of the work that's been done, and
absolutely
learned a lot in a short period of time.
And not just that, not just the financial aspect of it, it's every aspect of it.
Yep.
It's the presentation, it's the look of the presentation, it's all of those things. I know all that takes time.
Just to
energy,
acknowledge,
effort,
And
it's-
everything was spelled correctly.
Right,
So,
there you go.
thank you.
But it's just
That was
it's
Maricela's job. So
right. But it is important. It is important. I mean, it's a visual presentation. It's not just numbers. I mean, we've all been through presentations where it's just facts and figures, and it's like, quite honestly, the visual makes it a lot easier to understand. And I think for everyone else that's seeing it, from the public and even for staff, you know, it makes it easier to understand and comprehend, and makes it just a better presentation overall. So it's visual, it's the finance behind it, it's all the work behind it. So very good work. Thank you.
thank you.
And, I mean, is that without a finance director? This is all put together?
Right, interim, right?
Acting.
Acting.
So the art, obviously, this is not just my work, right? It's the work of everybody in here in this room. I'm not the artist, of course, of the cover page. While I enjoy doing this type of work, this was done by Jasmine Ramos and Tommy Garcia, who helped me design the cover sheet. So that's their.
Good job.
And
Good job.
I'm especially appreciate, I make the covers, so thank you guys, appreciate it. No, could you, just for the,
We'll edit that out.
oh, come on.
Thank you.
Already we have.
This is just a draft,
Yeah, we want
everybody.
it to be bigger.
This is just a draft.
Just for the public, and I can only imagine roughly how many hours and labor would this encompass? Do you have an idea? I mean, because I came to see Tyler yesterday. He's all, can it wait till July, please? And I'm like, what? I knew what was going on.
I will disclose this with Tyler's permission. My time card for this pay period was 126 hours.
For 2 weeks?
Meh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
That was recorded.
Yeah, no, we get it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
dedication, and that's what it takes to get these jobs. And honestly, the positions that all of you guys hold, if you guys weren't so dedicated, you just wouldn't be successful at it. That's what it requires, so.
But I also think it's important for not just the council to recognize it, but for the public and even
Yeah,
for staff
absolutely.
to recognize it, because quite honestly, we'll see a presentation, and I know everyone here, one thing about this council is that everybody on council works hard. Everyone.
Yeah.
Ramon works hard, I work hard, Donnie works hard, Luke works hard, Gil works hard. We all are workers, right? We work hard. We don't sit by the sidelines and just kind of do things. But I'm a hard worker, we're all hard workers here, and so I appreciate hard work, and I know what that's like. So, and people sometimes just see the final product, they gloss through it, but there's so much work behind it. Just in your case, over 100 hours, then you have staff members that are putting in, countless hours as well. And so it's a lot of work. And I think the public sometimes is very, quick to criticize us as city staff, as city council. But they're not very quick to praise us sometimes. But I'll praise the staff, and I'll tell you that your work doesn't go unnoticed. Everybody's work is appreciated. And, I mentioned it during the mayor's breakfast and stuff like that, but we have like 135 full-time people right now, something like that. And then, it goes up for summer lifeguards and stuff like that, but 135 full-time people, more or less. And we're running a city in a community of about 27,000, 28,000 people, think about that. It's not very many people, to operate an entire city. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you all for the effort that you're putting in, not just on this budget cycle, but in the work that you do every day, whether you're public safety, whether you're public works or IT or library services or any department, finance. Everybody contributes, everybody does. And to include council, we have our own role too, and we're part of the team as well. I know sometimes we staff doesn't see us that way, but I can tell you, I do my job too. I think we all do. We all put in the effort to make sure that we're representing well and we're, taking care of our.
On display last night.
It was on display last night, but there's times where I have to defend our city and defend staff. It's like, hey, it's like I know everybody's working hard. So anyway, good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good job. All right. So on the agenda is. That wraps it up for the study session. We're going to go into closed session for a moment with City Council, but I want to thank everybody again just for all the work that you're doing, and let's keep it up. Like even the cover page, even like all those elements of everything, it matter. They matter. All those things, it all matters. So I appreciate the work that's being done. Let's keep on grinding, and let's have a good rest of the evening. Thank you.